Hi everyone, Carmen Bazzato here with Rhyme Signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of saying the word cousin more often than any other character in mainstream television has ever dared to. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Fleshvessel album, Yearning, Promethean Fates Sealed. When one commits oneself to the position of a YouTube music reviewer, one inevitably finds that there are, dry spells during the year for new releases that interest you. I had been worried for a while that July was going to be one such month, and in truth, if I hadn't cast my net a little wider than usual, it could very well have been. But one of the most interesting fish that I've caught this month as a result of more expansive searching is most assuredly this astonishing debut record from Chicago-based foursome Fleshvessel. And I want to waste no time in telling you that there is very little that will adequately prepare you for just what on earth this album is and what it sounds like. In the broadest sense of the word, this is avant-garde metal, but even with as far-reaching a descriptor as that can be, it genuinely doesn't feel, quite adequate enough to describe what's going on with this record. The artwork, the band name, the overall aesthetic screams dark, blackened, savage and evil-sounding metal. And in truth, there is a baseline of this, yes, but this record is so much more than what it appears on a face level. And I'm confident that if you have even the most passing of interests in experimental music, then you will find something on this album that will satisfy. So, how can I describe this album, this band, this sound? I mean, that's what I'm here to do, right? My job is to talk to you all about this album, let you know what it's all about, and how it makes me feel. So let's break things down a little, tell you who's in this band, what they play, and that might give you an idea of what you're getting yourself into. We have Alexander Torres on electric guitar, viola, Puerto Rican cuatro, door harp, jaw harp, drum programming, atmospheres and mixing. There's Troll Hart on the upright piano, keyboards, synthesizers and vocals. Skada Skrit Oat Kruan on fretless bass, electric guitar, acoustic guitar and Thai fin. And rounding things off is Gwyn Hotzer on sea flute, wooden piccolo and the ocarina. Not to mention the multiple guest musicians handling duties on instruments like the glockenspiel, darbuka, trumpet and clarinet, amongst others. So yeah, there's a lot going on from a purely instrumental perspective. There's an astonishing amount of eggs in this basket, but thank goodness it never feels too overwhelming. Nothing is ever piled on top of each other to the point of absurdity or discordant noise. Now that's not to say that this record isn't sonically dense, because good lord it really is. But despite the chaos, the complexity and the intensity of the instrumentation, at its core, Yearning is a record that follows its mission statement beautifully. This is music for musicians. This is music to challenge your perceptions and understanding of precisely what it can do. And I left my first full listen of this album absolutely breathless and spent about a good hour or so reflecting on precisely what it was that, I just experienced. Yearning is a nicely structured album, essentially consisting of 4 principal songs, glued together with interstitial tracks in between them referred to as vignettes, and totalling a tiny 55 minutes in length. It's honestly just about perfect, feeling neither too long nor too short, and allowing the band to really flex the grand scope of their overall ideas perfectly. It's how well the band blends the extremities of the most intense, aggressive of metals with the experimental what-if approach of avant-garde music that makes this record so fascinating, and you really feel this fusion remarkably well on opening track Winter Came Early, with its down-tempo, nearly ragtime-sounding piano intro with flamenco guitars playing over the top before the world drops out from underneath you as Troll Hart's deep, booming, rolling growls kick in over the top of the kitchen sink approach of the instrumentation. It's an incredibly intense way to start things off, but it's just about enough to be fascinating rather than fearful. And just as you might start thinking it's too much, the band steps on the brakes and brings back this wonderful, haunting acoustic guitar passage where the woodwind instruments and delicate glockenspiel lead the charge. It must be said that for those who are adverse to growled vocals, that there isn't a huge amount of song passages on this album. I mean, yes, they are there, But this band is allowing their instrumentation to carry the majority of the album, with the vocals mostly serving as, scene setters and atmosphere builders. The first vignette serves to break up the action, allowing the listener a chance to catch their breath from the intensity of the 11-minute opener, a tactic that will see repeated use throughout the album to great success, I might add. It's like having a nice glass of ice-cold water in between mouthfuls of salty and savoury food. Too much of one thing can get overwhelming, so the fact that the band has recognised this and has built in these reprieves over the course of the album goes to show that they respect the listener a great deal. And despite the sound of this record going as hard as it does into the avant-garde, it's these vignettes, which are the much more stripped down, accessible and far less intense than the main course, that really help to sort of bring a balance to the overall experience. To try and describe every moment on this album would be a bit of a fool's errand, as this is honestly the kind of album you could kind of probably, write a thesis on. The sheer depth, scale and complexity of the overall compositions here are kind of intimidating if I'm being real with you all. I mean, I only play bass, and to a relatively amateur level, but I do have a degree of knowledge about music theory and whatnot, so from my own admittedly lacking perspective, I can tell you that the guys in this band are no slouches when it comes to pure technical knowledge and artistry. It's the elements of free jazz, of bold experimentation, of braveness and sheer why the hell not instrumentation throughout its runtime that made this album stick out so strongly with me. But make no mistake, I didn't immediately fall in love with Yearning. This album took its time with me. Each subsequent listen was more endlessly fascinating than the last, and each time I pressed play I went into it expecting one thing due to the prior listen, and I walked away with something completely different. There were listens where I was prepared for the guttural savagery of the guitars, the broad and malignant-sounding vocals, and the velvety smooth basswork, but on these listens I took away the retro-sounding synth work, the grand atmospherics, and the genuine bleak beauty of it all. It's a record that is constantly evolving, shifting, and mixing up how it sounds to the listener. The best kind of avant-garde music is that which is willing to try things that no one else is doing, and I can confidently say that despite my 4 fans of recommendations in my splash screen at the start of this video, it's still kind of difficult to say exactly who this album is likely to appeal to. But honestly, that's half the fun. I mean, who is this album for? I still have no idea. I still don't even know if it's for me. But I do know that I can't stop listening to this. Yearning has derailed my work on multiple in-progress reviews, as I can't wrap my head around it, and I was honestly hoping that getting my thoughts out here in this format would help me to understand just what on earth I've been experiencing. And it's sort of helped, as I'll be real with you all, sometimes I really do struggle to articulate my thoughts on an album. There are times where you can only use so many superlatives to describe how a piece of music makes you feel. And in the case of this record, I think I'd need an extremely comprehensive thesaurus to adequately convey the emotional state that this record has frequently left me in. Sometimes an album will leave me feeling elated, at times it will leave me feeling triumphant, morose, anxious, introspective, and more besides, but it is extremely rare when an album can achieve all of those emotions within its runtime, and even rarer when it can do it within one 5-minute period of music. Fleshvessel have achieved precisely this. They have taken me in an iron, vice-like grip and shaken me around with reckless abandon. Yearning, Promethean, Fate Sealed is hands down one of the most interesting, creative, confusing, and unavoidable records I've listened to in the 2020s so far. It sounds kind of at face value like an evil Van de Graaff generator from the dimension of chaos and confusion. They've managed to single-handedly challenge the notions of what I consider music to be capable of by crafting an album that is so broad in its strokes, so wide in its genre specification, that I honestly think that everyone in the world should listen to this at least once, if only for a demonstration as to precisely how unusual music can be, as to how fearless you can be with music, and how exciting it can truly be. So what else can I say about Fleshvessel's Yearning, Promethean, Fate Sealed? You'll notice that I didn't go into a great deal into the minutiae of the individual tracks within this review, and honestly that's not by accident. To describe this in detail, to go into a, track-by-track breakdown would kind of be spoiling the fun, really. This is an album about discovery, about finding those individual moments within the chaos that truly speak to you, that open up your ears to what people can do with music, and figuring out for yourself if this is a complex, layered sequence of musical inspiration, or a chaotic, completely ridiculous mess of an experience that makes you want to flee in abject horror. I think it's safe to say, though, that I do feel overall very positively about this album, and my personal recommendation is to pick this up in physical format. But believe me when I tell you that this is most assuredly not a safe recommendation. This is going to be a record that divides opinion, where people will fall into either camp love or camp hate, with very few people sitting on the fence. But I implore you to at least give this one a chance, as it's so incredibly rare that an album will leave me lying awake at night trying to unpack the experience in my own head quite as much as this one has done. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you have listened to the record, I'd love to know what you thought about it in the comments down below. If you did like this video, please do share it around as usual with anyone else who you think would possibly enjoy it, and please do consider subscribing to the channel for more content. I will leave my link tree below, where you'll find all the places to find me on social media, as well as a link to my Ko-fi page if you're feeling particularly generous and want to help support the channel. But until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures very odd.